Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers.
I can't tell you how excited I am to be on right now. It's been a couple of weeks of excitement, getting prepared, and I've done a lot of things in my life, but this has got to be close to the top.
Thank you, and Reader's Magnet, and thank you, John, for putting this forth and taking the chance on us authors in presenting this out to the world.
I've enjoyed this immensely, Joanne.
Ellie, so have I. Thank you for who you are, and thank you, Reader's Magnet. You all are beautiful, and you've worked so very hard, and we are blessed.
We are.
I thank everybody that's involved with this process, because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers. We thank Reader's Magnet and everybody that's involved. I love Reader's Magnet. They say, we share your stories with the world.
Well, hello there again. This is Kenneth Sousa, the author of Mandar of Atlantis. It's a series, and I'm going to talk more about the other books in the series today. Yesterday, I spoke a lot about what was going on in the book, what was going on in my last book, which is also called Black Menace. You can buy both of those on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. And you'll love both stories. This is more about birds. This is not about Atlantis, but the Atlantis story goes way back in our myths, all the way back to Plato, all the way back before Plato in Egypt. Obviously, the Atlanteans did exist, did spread their civilization around the world. My personal belief is that we have pyramids everywhere because they use pyramids. In the second book of Mandar, it's called Atlan. The representative hall for the government in Atlantis is a huge pyramid building. And Mandar talks a little bit to Selena, his married lover, who he has no physical relationship with, but they are deeply in love. He talks about the pyramid, how it was built. She questions him on the hall. They have to go to representative meetings in the hall. Mandar is not only an Air Force pilot for Atlantis, it's a high-tech society, so it has an Air Force. And he is also a representative. He had to take over from his father when his father became ill. So I'm telling you a little bit about the story, but I'm not telling you very much about the story. It's your job, it's my job to write it and your job to read it. But you'll enjoy the reading. At any rate, there are 3 books in the story. The first one is Mandar of Atlantis. This is what I call the Mandar series, or the Stepmother Earth series. Mandar is basically out of Atlantis in the first trip because he's Selena and her husband Kirak, who's also an evil dude, is captured by Zaharab and his mother Poltar. Now Poltar is an Atlantean. Her name is capital P, capital O, capital L, dash, capital T, capital A, capital R. All the Atlanteans have capitalize names like that because they felt they were the highest in the world, which probably at the time they were. And therefore, when you read the book, you have to, you know, you're talking to an Atlantean, or an Atlantean is talking because their letters are capital, their names are capitalized. And there's only 6 letters in all of their names. The second book, Atlan, takes place in Atlantis itself after Mandar brings Selena and Kirak back to Atlantis. Unfortunately for Mandar, there are characters like the leader of the High Command, Comgem, who's interested in using Selena again to go into the underworld and get creatures to help take over Atlantis. He finds out that he can't do it eventually, and so he uses physical force to do what he wants to do. It's a good book. I'm already well through half of it. It's even better than Mandar of Atlantis, I believe. The third book is Mandar in Mu. For those who don't know what Mu is, as some people call it malaria, it's out in the Pacific Ocean. Those people, according to Edgar Casey, yesterday I told you about Edgar Casey, who was a healer and would go back into a trance and not only heal people of their ailments, but while he was in the trance, he would tell them who they were in their past lives, and many of them were past lives in Atlantis. It appears that there are a lot of Atlantean reincarnations in our time period. For whatever reason the stars are doing it, I don't know. But that appears to be true. And the reincarnations are including Manny Silver, who starts the beginning of the book working in a security guard in a factory, but he reads Edgar Casey, and he reads that Edgar Casey says there is a information about Atlantis buried in the bottom of a pyramid somewhere in Central America. Well, this gets Manny Silver thinking, yes, I'm going to go to Central America and find this. Well, he has a camper, and he decides to drive around the world, sees an old girlfriend out in San Francisco, and drives down into Texas to a house of a cousin, and he leaves his camper with the cousin, and he hitches across into Central America, Mexico first, and gets sick. Goes to Guatemala City, where he spends 4 days in bed and going and going, and I know that because I actually did that. But a lot of adventures happen in these first 2 or 3 chapters to Manny, because Manny is a reincarnation of Mandar. And people 14,000 years ago, I picked the time 14,000 years ago, so it seemed realistic to me, that Atlantis was existing. And in Atlantis, people like Zaharab and his mother Poltar were fighting to take over Atlantis. And they wanted to use Selena to go on into the underworld and bring up these creatures to take over Atlantis. That's basically the first book, although there's much, much, much more to it. You love the characters. Even the bad guys have the good and bad points. But you'll get into that book. But again, I'm telling you more about some of the other books that are coming out of this series. Mandar in the second book, he gets back to Atlantis. He has to fight his way to Poseidon, which is the capital of Atlantis. And with him, he has Lugar. Lugar is a Cro-Magnon man, but in the Edgar Casey books, he mentioned beings called the Lessers. Casey never explained what the Lessers were, but I decided that it would be the Cro-Magnon man race who call themselves Lessers in my book. And they are treated as Lessers. They're very intelligent, but they're big and slow, but they do have things like magic. Lugar has a crystal around his neck, and that has a lot of magic qualities that I use throughout the books, even the third book. in the third book, Manny, Atlantis is in trouble. They're having a lot of earthquakes. They're having a lot of rumblings going on in the earth. They don't necessarily believe they're going to be destroyed and go under the ocean like mythology says, but they think it's coming from somewhere. I have a question here. Joseph Felton, hello again. The much awaited author, love to hear you again, Kenneth. Well, thank you so much. For some reason, I'm a little more nervous talking today than I was the first 2 days. Don't ask me why, maybe because I probably believe that I said everything I could say, but obviously that's not true. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about myself when I finish talking about the third book. The third book, Lugar, Manda, and Manda has a sort of daughter, and she has magical qualities. And he takes her and Lugar over to Mu. They can't find Mu. They learn through adventures that Mu actually is in another dimension, and it's the magic of the crystal and Arika, the girl, who get them into another dimension where the society itself is destroying itself. There's two sides, and they're at the edge of war where they're going to destroy themselves. Well, that would be fine for everybody if they did. We wouldn't care. But the fact of the matter is, the Marians or Mu people, their thought forms created Earth, which means they created Mandar and Lugar, and the life that's going on that we see today was created by these Mu people in their thought forms, and it became physical reality. So Mandar has to save them. Why do we have another message? What do we hear from Red S? Love this guy so much with loving and caring life. Now that would be Mandar. Yeah. Red S. Oh, that's Red Sanchez. Hello, Red. At any rate, back to the story. Manda has to stop the war, use his powers, find out why they're warring, solve that mystery. Otherwise, therefore, there is going to be no Earth, or there is no me looking at you right now on the television. We were never created because the people of Mu created us, and if they're all gone, they miss all of their memories. So therefore, so are we. At any rate, that's the first three books of the Mandas series. There could be more. It's open to have more stories, but that's the three that I'm thinking about right now. I also spoke about Black Menace yesterday. This was the last book that I wrote. I'm working on my 8th book right now. Black Menace is a story about two birds that I watched on a lake that I was still living on, in Florida. And the two birds were so human. I watched them for 3 years that I couldn't help but deciding that, well, I'm in the middle of writing this Manda book, but I think I'll take a little time off and do a short story about these two birds, which I named Mick and Beck. Mick and Beck happen to be the names of my next two youngest siblings. And let you know a little bit more about my family, I'm the oldest of 10 children. Unfortunately, my mother died at age 43 after giving birth to 10 children. But having so many children and so many brothers and sisters, for me, it gives me more adventures to write about, because each one of them has their own lives and has their own things going on. And sometime I will definitely write about them too. From Natasha Fillmore. Any classic sci-fi masterpiece that you think have similarities to your book? Any classic that, well, even though it's not classic, Star Wars might be a little bit like it. The series with Indiana Jones is very similar to it. I think in the old days when we looked at a science fiction movie or any type of fiction like science fiction, they tended to be slow moving and not very deep. I mean, you get your little bits of action here and there, and some good characters, but they didn't have what these new movies have now. They don't have all that extreme action and deep characters and people who are princesses and heads of government and a lot more characterization than you had in the older movies and books. So I think today things are a little bit better, but we are different. We're growing with people. I started off writing back in the 70s. To tell you something about myself, my first book was called, you can see it, I don't know, I Must Tell. That's really poetry connected together to make a story. And I did another one right after that called Camp Boy. And this is a picture of that. And if you can see it well enough, that's me in the middle of the picture when I was about 3 years old up at the camp. The camp was a place where my father's friend bought about 25 acres in New Hampshire with a lake on it and a big field in the middle. And he wanted his friends to be able to come up and visit, and we all did. And we built cottages, and there's about 5 cottages around this camp. And I became camp boy. Nobody else, everybody else was single. My family was, my mother and father were married, and I was born, and I was 2 when I went there. And I have been going there for most of my life. First 18 years of every summer I was spent there, fishing, boating, uh, no problems with cars because it was a little dirt road that got you there. But that's a little bit of my background. Uh, it comes through in my books. When you see a book like Mandar, where did these characters come from? How do I know what Atlantis looks like besides reading what they say about Edgar Cayce's talking? You have to use, as a writer, use what you know. I know about the woods. I know about a lake. I know about fishing. I know about a lot of wood lore. You have to use that not necessarily as the lore of today, but the lore of what you think it was going to be 14,000 years ago when Mandar and Atlantis existed. Uh, it was not easy writing those first 2 books. I was in another different space. The Camp Boy book doesn't even have page numbers. I thought at that time I was extremely rebellious, and people should be able to read that book from inside out as opposed to from beginning to end. Anyway, they wanted to read it, and if I took away page numbering the pages, they might do that. It's also filled with pictures that I drew. Before I became a writer, I was in the sheet metal business, and it was a union job. My uncle got me into the business, and eventually I came to the position of head planner, and I had to use the paperwork and everything and redraw the ductwork for big buildings like schools and hospitals. And I learned to draw very well, and I did the drawings that are in Camp Boy. You can't buy that now; they've been out of service for years. But someday it may come back. But I'd love to go back and fix them. That's true. At any rate, back to Mandar and Atlantis. Mandar is an American Indian. Even though Atlantis is separate from the United States, they were the Indian race, according to Edgar Cayce, was there. Jessa Felton. How Black Menace chapter described the apocalyptic world. They don't really describe it. The only thing that's actually from our time period is a bridge. There's a bridge across the lake which separates the north and south of the lake where the warring is going to go on. south, the north is always trying to take over the south. That's where the more fish, and then that's what Black Menace, the bad man and the bad character, I should say, of the book eats, and he's eaten most of the fish in the northern area, so he has to try to take over the south, so he has more food to eat. That's the basic story. Well, there's a lot more to it than that. And again, there's a good example. The lake, I live on one now, but as a kid, I grew up on it. I would swim out to the middle of it. I know what it feels like to be a bird out in the middle of the lake and saying, well, I hope there's no alligators here. I hope there's no snakes here. I hope there's not a big fish that's going to come or a hawk dive down and destroy me. Oh, from Rebecca Jordan. Mandau reminds of Conan the Barbarian, but smarter. Technically, yes, smaller also. The Indians aren't quite as big as Conan was. I love those stories. I watched both of them, the new ones and the old ones. But he is smarter. He's technically, because he flies a jet, he's technically available to do any type of work that is necessary for him to do. Even though he has to put up with Zaharab, the bad guy, who's the priest of Inanna, and the castle of Inanna, which he has to enter and save Selena, and go into another dimension from there to do it. I don't want to tell you again too much about the story, but that's not much. That's just a small little piece. To any plans to publish another book next year? Mandau seems to have been unfinished, and unfinished, absolutely. Atlan is the name of the story I'm working on right now. That's Mandar again, and he is back in Atlantis, and he hasn't gotten his airship back yet. It's destroyed by Zahara, but he is looking for an airship, and he has a new friend, Ken Six. Ken Six is a good part of the story, and Ken Six helps him out with everything, which is, again, trying to save Selena from being taken over by the bad guys, like Comgen, who's the head of High Command. And his High Command is trying to take the whole government of Atlantis over. And this is a lot of what the story's about. And that's where the pyramid comes in. The pyramids are where the representatives of the government meet. And that pyramid actually does get taken over. I don't want to tell you too much more than that, but it's not all of the book. There's a lot more going on in the book than just that part of it. Let's see, where was I? Oh, back to the camp. The camp is Camp Boy. That's me. And the man who started the camp was Campman. And that's part of the Camp Boy book is Campman. But Camp Boy learned to swim out in the lake, learned to fish, learned to do the things that need to be done in Mandau. So everything you do in your life can lead you to science fiction. Oh, from looks like Mason Walmsley. What challenge did you encounter in creating a new universe for your book? Well, it wasn't an impossible thing to do because how many movies have you seen? How many books have you read where there were universes? Somewhere in your head, it clicks. And when you're writing your own universe, you have something to look back on, some place that you want to write. When in Mandau, when they go into the underworld, it's how you would picture an underworld to be with stalagmites, stalactites, cauldrons of boiling volcanic ash, and tunnels where more creatures are coming out of. These creatures seem to be human, but they're not. They're human bodies with animal heads, and they're extremely vicious. But they're very slow. They're slow moving and they're slow thinking. That's why Zaharab and Poltar use them because they can get them to do what they want. And the whole point of that is to get them up into our dimension and have them to help take over Atlantis, which you can find out whether they do or they don't. I looks like Mason Walmsley again. What challenge did you encounter in creating a new universe? Same question. That's the thing. You the creative people can come up with things. I mean, look at all the different television shows. Look at all the different movies. Look at the different books. Somebody's got it in their head to create something that you've never read before, you've never seen before, and the sounds, the smells, the clothes. I got a question from my publisher the other day about, well, we need to do some work. Tell me what kind of clothes they wear. Well, what kind of clothes would Mandar wear? Well, he's a pilot. And wait a second, I have another question. Rebecca Jordan. It's always here. It's always lovely to hear from you, Kenneth. Well, thank you very much. I'm enjoying doing it. I was surprised. I was nervous about doing it, but it's nice to have an audience to tell your story to, and to tell how you came to write that story. It's writing is not an easy job. Like I said, I've been doing it for 40 years, and on my 8th book. But I've done other things. I've produced audio-visual shows. I got a national award from a show I wrote about. I produced about Vietnam. I produced, directed a show, and wrote a show that was on Boston TV called Don't Wait. It was an anti-nuke show. I've done a lot of things besides traveling into Central America and finding a rocket with flames coming out of the bottom of it, telling me they had rocket ships back in the Mayan days. Everything that goes on in your life can lead to a science fiction novel or a typical novel. It's you just pay attention, paying attention and being aware. One of the most important things in your life is to be aware of yourself and the others around you, and always treating people the way you would like to be treated. And that's one of the things I'm trying to tell people through my own books, even if they are science fiction. Bob Montgomery, it's great news that you're going to be a sequel. There's going to be a sequel coming. Oh yes, I've always planned this Mandat series to be more than one book. When I first started working on it, it was a different type of a book. It was same thing, but it was more of him, Mandar, fighting the beasts and the characters that were with him, which were 5 lessers. And I realized, wait a minute, I need to explain more of who Mandar is. And that's how I went back to writing Mandar of Atlantis. So I could explain that first and then go on with his adventures, and which I'm doing. In this case, the next one you're going to read is Atlan, and that should be out by early next year. I intend to finish it probably by February, and so hopefully it will be published not long after that. Again, it's going to take me another year probably to write what I'm calling Mandar in Mu, which is the third in the Mandat series. And as I'm writing, I'm also thinking ahead to that book, and characters that I'm coming up with in the Atlan book are going to be carried over in some cases into the next book. So there's a lot in my head to think about, besides the fact that I would love to take the time to be able to write another Black Menace book, because I still see all those birds out on the lake, and there's children of Nick and Beck who are going through adventures of their own, and they would be good to write about. There's all kinds of if you've swum in a lake, you know there's all kinds of things going on in lakes. There's big fish and down in Florida, alligators and snakes and you name it. But they all make a good adventure, and building an adventure and the tension in a book comes from not knowing if something's there or not. Sometimes, what's going to happen to me if I walk into this cave? Uh, Pictures that I put in that Camp Boy book show what's in the head of these kids who want to go to this Mystery Hill cave up in Salem, New Hampshire. But there's all kinds of scary looking things in their mind inside the cave that they don't want to go. Manny, who is still the main character, calls them chicken, and there's pictures of chickens in the book. At any rate, you can forget about those old books. But they are important to knowing how I came to be a writer and how I got to where I'm writing about Manda. And obviously, my skill has gotten better through those 40 years. And I don't have problems with dialogue now. I don't have problems putting a character in, a new character. I'm better at writing who this character is. Those early books, I mean, it was just one-dimensional. Now they're much more than one-dimensional. I believe that my time may be up. I went over by about 10 minutes yesterday because I just kept going and going. But I'd like to say I'm so happy that all of you could join me with Reader's Magnet. I'm happy that you enjoy the show, and I'm really happy that you enjoy hearing me talk. So if my time is up, I guess I'll have to say goodbye, but we'll be back. And I will tell you more about stories, and I will tell you more about how I became a writer, which is a little bit of a long story itself. So goodbye for now, and thank you very much for watching the show. It's a good show, and writers especially need to hear other writers describing what their life is like, because it's a very solitary job. There's nobody sitting beside you writing a book and telling you how to write it. You write it. All righty. Thank you so much. Goodbye for now, and keep writing. Bye bye.